Really do a great job. I'm going to hand it over to you. You've got your lapel mic?
I think so. Can you guys hear me?
And I'm going to vacate. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Yep.
And thank you, everyone, for being here. Just before we get started, I don't have the screen behind me, but get social. You can see on screen the Twitter handle and our handle for the hashtag for today. I just wanted to sort of thank you all for showing up today. When we sort of, thank you, that might be useful. When we set out earlier in the year to create an open source community in financial services, we knew the challenges that came with it, but we thought that really creating and putting together a conference like this one would cement the community, would create the identity of the community. And we are amazed by the turnout that we had. We were setting up for less than 100 people. We had 400 registered people. This is to me just yet another sign that this industry is ready for open collaboration, very much like other industries have realized. And so today, we wanted to really focus on why open innovation is a much sort of superior way of driving innovation in this industry. And so, Todd already sort of covered it, but 2 years ago when I joined the Symphony Software Foundation, full disclosure, I don't come from financial services. I had to learn a few things about this business. I think my tagline when I got the job was that I'm not an open source hippie. I think I mentioned that to Paul during my interview process. And full disclosure, yes, I had dreadlocks 6 years ago. So if you find the picture on internet, you can tweet it, you can make fun of me, come to the booth and tease me with that. But really, when I stepped in, we realized that on one hand, we had an industry that was undergoing a massive change between the fintech wave and disruptive platforms, like blockchain, very much open source in nature. I think, we'll hear from Amber later on, from JP Morgan, what their experience with blockchain. But, to me was, I think blockchain is a technology that would basically not make sense if it wasn't open source. And therefore, we realized that the industry was changing, and that I had the luck to sit with some of the industry leaders. If you look at our foundations there, we have some of the most important firms on the street. We have some of the most important vendors with us, and we opened up to the fintech players. If you sort of look at our silver membership, we wanted to really create a community that was unprecedented. And so as we started collaborating on the Symphony platform, which I'm assuming many of you know, we realized that there was a bigger and broader opportunity to collaborate in this industry. Now, clearly it's not easy to do open source. I don't want to come here and just sell you that you're going to go tomorrow, do the right choices, have your processes together. It takes experience, and it takes, especially as a corporate, having done it a few times to actually get open source right. And so really this is the main reason why we put together this conference today. We wanted to bring industry leaders from the open source world, from financial services world, and from other industries that over the last few years have started collaborating in the open, to answer really three questions. One of the main questions, especially in this highly regulated business that I get, is how are we going to do open source? We're not ready to do open source. And that really means sorting out your technology, your DevOps workflows, integrating with a whole new supply chain. That means changing the culture. We live in a highly competitive environment. We live in an environment that is highly siloed. So there's certainly an element, if a corporate wants to embrace open source, there's a certain element of culture change. But certainly, again, in a highly regulated business, the process, the legal aspects, we'll hear today from many experts that have solved this, again, in other industries. We felt that we had to provide also a framework, a policy, a governance for this industry to thrive. And on this note, I want to spend a quick second to thank BNY Mellon. This event would not have been possible with them. I want to, again, tap on what Todd said. BNY Mellon has been an amazing platinum member of our foundation. It has led some of our working groups and obviously is hosting this event, so we are absolutely thankful for that. And I want to bring on stage Matthew Joseph from BNY for a quick introduction. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Gab. Thanks to everyone for being here today. It's a pretty momentous occasion for open source as well as financial services. To Gab's point, there's a lot of change, especially from a culture perspective, and that's something that we've seen a lot of, where we've been very proud to engage in that culture change at BNY Mellon. So we're very proud and happy to be the host here from a physical perspective for this event today. We're proud to be a member of the Symphony Foundation, proud to be a member, for example, of the working groups as well. And we're excited to now be able to participate and share in the open source community. For example, putting out our first open source project, a series of educational exercises to help folks learn languages like Java and Kotlin. And we're excited to continue and be able to contribute to the Symphony Foundation our experiences as a guide for others to follow and participate in doing so as part of the working group. So again, thank you to the Symphony Foundation, thank you to the other Symphony members, and thanks to everyone for being here today. It's a pleasure to host and excited for the rest of the event.
Thank you so much. And so yes, BNY is part of our open source readiness working group. We have a working group that is very much focused, again, not only around technology, not only around the culture, but really around providing a policy and an industry-wide way for collaborating in open source. In a way, it's sort of meta open source collaboration. So the next question that I often hear is, what should I open source? Again, back to the, I'm not an open source hippie, I don't think everything should be open source. Guess what? We want you to have a profitable business model based on open source so that in turn you can reinvest sweat equity and money in our community and in our projects. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time this morning on the how and the what. You got much smarter people talking about it and how they have successfully implemented this throughout the whole day. So I hope you're going to be able to get some valuable information around the what and the how. But as any change management process, embracing open source requires work, requires you to, again, adapt your process and your culture. And therefore, as any change management process, you need to be very clear as to what is the business value. Again, as an individual, but also as a corporate, why should executives, why should decision makers undergo the change? What is the reason? And so I wanted this morning, and I think the keynotes from this morning are going to be very much focused on, again, why should financial services, whether you are a vendor or you are a consumer or producer of the financial services technology, why should you be considering open source? I think it all comes down to a realization that the technology landscape in which we live has completely changed over the last 10 years. Between digital transformation, cloud, mobile, I think it's fair to say that we live in the era of platforms. Out of 10 richest companies, 6 are platform companies. The Amazon, the Apple of the world. And none of them is a bank, which was pretty striking for me. So what does it mean? What is a platform? Well, a platform is a completely different way, not only to approach technology, but really to deliver value. So if you consider, what we have seen, in the Silicon Valley, and knowing that most firms here consider themselves technology companies, I think it's fair to say that banking and financial services should embrace the idea of platform-based economies and platform thinking and what actually that brings to the table in terms of how you build technology and how you deliver value to your counterparts. Just a show of hands, how many of you would say that they are platform vendors? Good. How many of you are platform users? Okay. So, one way or another, we all are engaged in what we call a platform ecosystem. And I just want to spend a second sort of to explain, or at least my view on how that changes the way we deliver value through technology. So if you think about traditional business models, well, that's a one-way street. Whether you own the full production chain or just you're part of it in the distribution or in any part of it, let's say, you are delivering value one way. Your value is what you produce and you deliver to your customer. That's how we've done business for centuries. What the platform economy and platform sort of revolution that I think we're living in brings in is a completely different way of delivering value. Value is produced by a thriving ecosystem that builds and lives on the platform and is mainly composed by consumers of value and producers of value. All the platform does is creating channels, is creating a new market, a new connection between players that ultimately were not able to exchange services or goods before. So I think this is fundamental and has a couple of key implications in terms of how we go about building technology. The first implication is that if you think about some of the most successful platforms, their core intellectual property, their core value, again, it's not the software itself, is the thriving ecosystem that they build on the platform. Airbnb does not own any houses. Facebook does not own any content. Even Stripe, again, is not a bank. They just provided access to a much broader audience and a much broader market to vendors. And so, again, I think this is fundamental to understand why you should be considering open collaboration. Your core intellectual property is not the platform, it's the thriving ecosystem that you're going to build on it. And I think the second takeaway on this is a common trait to all successful platform strategies is to build a truly open ecosystem. I think this industry has realized that. We've seen the rise of open APIs, say a few years later than the Silicon Valley, but when I joined 2 years ago, there was the new kid on the block. And ultimately, what does it mean to build an open ecosystem? Well, it means that when you're building technology, you need to make sure that you enable not only, you don't only favor your goals, but actually you allow the ecosystem to thrive. You want the ecosystem, both producers and consumers, to choose you without friction. You want to be the obvious choice. That's how all those platforms became what they are. And so in a way, if you're familiar with the Nash equilibrium, in a way, to me, building an open platform is really a Nash equilibrium type of approach to technology. In every stage, you need to do what's good for you and good for the ecosystem. In a way, this grows the pie rather than growing your slice of the pie. This is really what platform businesses are about and how these firms have been wildly successful with that. Now, what does it mean to build an open platform? And that's where we get to the main topic of today, which is open source. I don't think I'm saying anything new. The industry has collaborated on open standards, for the longest time. And I'm voluntarily folding actually Open API under open standards there, because I think that open APIs are nothing else than a standard representation of objects and actions that you can do on a system. And so to me, again, definitely open standards and open API can create a quasi-open ecosystem in which you provide the building blocks for your ecosystem to thrive. So there is certainly an amazing benefit, and we're not dismissing here open standards, but we think that on top of open standards, in a platform-based economy, you ought to be considering open source. Whether you are a platform consumer or a producer of value, or you actually are a vendor that sells a platform, well, there are both. I'm not going to go through the details of all of them. You're going to hear about it today, but there are both tactical and strategic advantages for your strategy to actually collaborate not only on open standards, but on open source itself. And, fundamentally, the kicker is if your core value is not in the software, is not in the platform, if your core value is what ecosystem you're able to create on the platform, guess what? By open sourcing your platform, you only yield those benefits of community building, of lower go-to-market costs, of lower TCOs, of a community of contributors that can bring your ecosystem to places that you haven't even imagined. And so all of this without giving out your secret sauce. Your secret sauce is actually the ecosystem. It's what it's above the value line. And by all means, we want you to keep that for yourself. We want you to be successful in your open source strategy. Couple of, I think, additional angles here are, in my experience, open standards and open source by themselves are limited, but the combination of the two creates a much faster iteration cycle on actually achieving what a standard or what an open source project should get to, what the original objectives are. And secondly, I am particularly amazed, I think I'm out of time, I'm particularly amazed by how open source and open standards can marry the developer level. Again, I'm a developer at heart, probably doesn't look like, but I have a hoodie under the suit. Developers love open source. Developers love the developer experience and the openness of collaborating. Well, guess what? Decision makers, through open standards, can still, ensure connection to the business value, connection to sort of the higher goal that the company wants to achieve. And so I think the efficient combination of these two tools really creates, a thriving community, an open ecosystem. Very much, I think an analogy is if open standards, give you, or open APIs give your ecosystem building blocks, well, open source gives your ecosystem a 3D printer to create things that you didn't even imagine when you create the platform originally. Now, wildly over time, but I'm going to just say something. As I said before, doing open source is not easy, especially if you want to mix open source and open standards. And that's where we think our foundation can help. We think our foundation can be the platform for you guys to collaborate in the open and ultimately drive faster innovation in the industry. How do we do that? Well, there's three key roles that we play as a foundation in this ecosystem. First of all, we provide trust. Don't forget, we are asking competitors to work with each other. That's the most fundamental. Being a trusted player for all of you, it's probably the most important value that we can offer to the community. In a way, we're Switzerland. I guess that Italian canton of Switzerland. But, we want to be providing a transparent governance, cleanliness of our IP, and definitely the trust that the software that we produce is something that you can use and that respects your quality standards. Secondly, efficiency. We are asking you to contribute. We're asking you to work outside of your day job. We want to make that as effective as possible, both from a governance, decision-making standpoint, as well as the developer experience. And last but not least, again, an ecosystem. Your ecosystem is going to be as powerful as it's big and thriving. And so we see our objective to be creating and growing this ecosystem from membership, community, and developer standpoint. All of this conjugated for this industry. We are very aware of the limitations in how you guys can collaborate across the firewall, and we are providing policies and infrastructure for that to happen in security. As a final note, one way that we're practically enabling this for the industry, enabling this collaboration for the industry, is what we call the Open Developer Platform. The Open Developer Platform is a foundation offering that is given to all of our open source developers that provides, first of all, a whole developer toolchain for ensuring that the code that we produce checks all the boxes. As a firm, you should be able to come to the foundation, download software, get value. Don't worry about the security and IP compliance because we have taken care of it for you. And that also helps the developers. Your developers, if they come to our own foundation and work on the Open Developer Platform, will have a liberating developer experience. We will take care of all the complexity for them to just being able to collaborate and use APIs that we provide for all of them to develop. And so I'm going to wrap up and leave it to much smarter people than me. But I think the 3 key takeaways are, we are living in a platform economy. Platform economies change the way you deliver value, and therefore you ought to be considering open source and open standard as a way to build open ecosystems. And as a foundation, we are here to help. So hopefully you come at our booth, hopefully you learn today, and you leave today by knowing how, why, and what you should be able to open source. Thank you so much.